10A and 62 of National Cohesion Integration Act. The issue of shareholding. I know my colleague here is my friend here. Now it's abandoned the issue of shareholding. It's talking about power. That is my senior colleague. Our core position has been amply pointed out by my colleagues before me, is that the said charge, even when taken at its highest, is not an impeachable offense to justify the removal of the first petitioner from office. There is an element of hypocrisy in the way the issues of shareholding and tribalism was handled by both houses of parliament. Our constitution, my lady and my lords, envisages and encourages ethnic, cultural, religious diversity. Even the concept of devolution is founded on recognition of culture and ethnic identity. Therefore, in the face of Kenya's diversity, the Constitution requires that various state officers led by the president should take into account ethnic and regional diversity in making public appointment and allocation of resources. It's not a new concept. It's in the Constitution. The key point here I'm making is this. Then, is that both ethnicity and tribalism, isn't it that both ethnicity and tribalism realities of a national existence and political dealings? And so this subject must be handled with sensitivity and wisdom as opposed to trivializing or sensationalizing it. Further, to the foregoing, it is worth noting that it is the sixth respondent, rather than the first respondent, who can legally and politically be held responsible for skewed public appointments and resource allocation that remain to date a major factor of Kenyan politics. This court should take judicial notice of the manner in which the sixth respondent has systematically appointed state officers to public office, primarily from his ethnic tribe. Yet even it's not subject to impeachment proceedings as the first respondent, by way even when the first respondent never made any such appointments. Proposition 2, Parliament cannot rewrite its own rules to unseat a deputy president. I'm about to finish, my lady. Article 152 of the Constitution is not directory. It is mandatory. The procedure for removing a deputy president is constitutionally prescribed. Any standing order that deviates, breaches, or short-circuits the procedure is pro tanto void. Parliament cannot, by a majority vote on its own internal rules, amend this Constitution. Article 50 guarantees every person the right to fair hearing. The question is not whether Gachagua was given some hearing, but whether the hearing was fair, adequate, and constitutionally compliant, or what my senior colleague Ogola said, malicious compliance. Ongoya. The petitioners on the proposition number 4, equality before the law, means equality of procedure. My Lord, equality before the law also means equality of procedure. Article 27 is violated where a procedure is deployed selectively in a manner that treats one constitutional office bearer different from the standard the Constitution prescribes. The petitioners will demonstrate, and the one that we represent, that the procedure applied in the case of Gachagua would have been impermissible by any other proceedings. 5, impeachment was a symptom, not the disease. The deeper constitutional malady, as the petitioners will argue, is the capture of parliament as a deliberative institution. When senators vote for less money to go to their own counties on presidential instruction, the constitutional architecture of devolution and legislative independence collapse. It is our submission, therefore, that the 13th Parliament has been captured by the executive to an extent that it is no longer possible to consider it as an independent arm of government, or as the Nairobi senator eloquently observed in the quotation that I've just said. So it is our submission that the sixth respondent was ultimately responsible for the political conspiracy and mobilization that enabled the impeachment of the first petitioner from the flimsiest reasons and procedural scandals. In doing so, the sixth respondent abused presidential power in causing the impeachment of the first president of the first petitioner after their fallout. Finally, and on an independent judiciary is now this. This is our last line of defense, this court that we are today. Senator Sifuna won. Okay, I'll skip that.
We'll be quoting Senator Sifuna every time. When he's not an authority, he does not make any statement. I don't know what obsession.
Relax today, you know, it's about
Professor Ojenda says something worth quoting. He should be guaranteed I will quote him.
My lady, as I finish, because I'm just a minute to I'm finished. My lady, the 10th and 41st petitioner submit and will argue orally that the issue of declaration sought in the re-amended petition confirming the unconstitutionality of both the impeachment procedure and the standing orders that enable it. Number two, affirm unequivocally that Article 152 of the Constitution is not amendable by parliamentary resolution, standing orders, or executive instructions. Number three, send an unmistakable signal that the separation of powers and the independence of the constitutional office are not negotiable. And finally, vindicate the constitutional rights as outlined under Article 27 and Article 50 on equality before the law and fair hearing, in the circumstances where those rights must be visibly and consequentially at stake. So I submit. I've shortened my submission.
Thank you.
My Lord, Ms. Koira will only have less than 10 minutes to say something.
I want to know how many...
On our side is enough.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we want to structure our proceedings such that when we break for lunch, we come to start the respondent's case. So how many submissions do we have from petitioners?
I think now we have argued like 3. There are 4 more to go.
Hmm?
Are they 3? 3 more?
Yes.
Yes. But the rest were short as we are done. He's taking less than 10 minutes.
So how many do we have? You are how many? Please stand up if you intend to submit.
Yeah, my Lord, I'm yet to submit.
How much time will you need?
Like we all agreed before this court, 1 hour. We have very substantive submissions to make, my Lord, representing a petitioner.
And you? 15? You take how much time? 20 minutes?
I'll take less than 10 minutes.
So divide it by 2 and then proceed.
My Lord, good afternoon. The matter. My name is Koira Kimani. My Lord, a lot has been spoken by the 2 speakers who are before me. I wish to not regurgitate that information that has been given, but just to say 2 things, my Lord. The impeachment process that the first petitioner was subjected to is one that has raised a theme of fair hearing. In particular, my lords, I will be referring to paragraph 47 of our submissions. There we reference the grounds 1 of the articles of impeachment. In that ground, Your Honor, it was submitted, and I quote, that His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua's divisive and insightful public utterances over the last 2 years were incompatible with the high calling, stirred ethnic hatred, and falsely alluded to a non-existing government policy to discriminate. My lords, it is the submissions of the petitioners that there had to be a particularized statement following that charge in which the deputy president could respond to. There was none. These statements were very speculative, and in any case, no proof at all was ever produced before the August House to reference that there was indeed a government policy that appeared to suggest certain communities were being segregated or discriminated from the enjoyment of the services that were rendered. Number two, my lords, we wish to submit that as a deputy president, the first petitioner is the principal, his role is just to deputize the president. It therefore follows, my lord, that if there was any action to which the first petitioner could be subjected to impeachment, then that process had to be within the framework of Article 147, what was delegated to the deputy president in his exercise of the function, and what is it that he did that did not align with the mandate. Any other issue that the deputy president was impeached that didn't follow within the framework of Article 147, then that was a private issue, and there is a cause that any aggrieved party ought to have followed other than the impeachment process. My lord, lastly, allow me to make reference to our prayers in our amended petition, and specifically prayer number 6 and prayer number 7. For good record, we state that a declaration be issued to declare that the 14 days period prescribed under Article 149 for the President to nominate a person to occupy the office is to ensure compliance with Article 10, 38, 99, and 137, and thereafter, a declaration be issued to declare that the 60 days period prescribed under Article 149 of the Constitution to the National Assembly to vote on the President's nomination. My point is this, my lords, is that there's a time frame in which these things have to be done. It wasn't, it's a matter that is cast in stone, that there is a difference between the 14 days of nomination and number 2, the consideration of 60 days. A lot has also been submitted before this bench in relation to public participation. My lord, when that order of Kirinyaga was made that public participation be done, my lord, we were not even granted, Kenyans were not even granted 10 days out of the 60 days, my lord, to put in their concerns about the choice of the deputy president. My lord, it also follows that under our political democracy, the presidency, it's a matter of a conjoined twins. You come in as a president with your deputy president. For various reasons, my lord, I wasn't for the president, but I elected him by virtue of the first petitioners. That being the case, if then they were with the vice president, any Kenyan who actually made a similar finding while voting ought to have been granted sufficient time to scrutinize the candidature of the incoming deputy president to ensure to vote. And why am I saying this, my lords? Post-election, post-clearance by the IEBC, candidates, all political candidates are granted almost an average of around 90 days to do a campaign, to go to the people, to convince the people that I'm the right person to lead you in this country. But when it comes to nomination, my lord, of the deputy president, to which I participated in voting, I'm only granted a day, 2 days, a trial of 1 day. There's a reason as to why, Your Honor, the Constitution puts a 14-day timeline on presidential petitions, whereas there has been debate to extend that timeline, but it's 14 days. That is to ensure that, of course, there's no urgency, because if we were to follow then the reason, if this bench was to say that that impeachment process was lawful, it means this country is yet to see probably a declaration of invalidity or validity of an election, presidential election outcome within 1 day, and to say, but the petitioners and the respondents were all granted time, and a decision was made by the Supreme Court either within 1 day or within 2 days. My Lord, that was not the intention of the citizens of this country, and we urge you to accord us the prayers that we've sought in our amended petition. Thank you, my lords, and I'll be to seat.
Thank you.
My lords, that is all for the 10th to 41st petitioners. We request that the further re-amended petition be allowed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ndegwa will give you 45 minutes. Don't go beyond 45.
I will let you know when you have 10 to go.
Again, I will try my best. Thank you, my lords, my ladies. Permit me to begin by indicating that as we appear before you this afternoon, the heavy weight of our Constitution, or rather I feel the overwhelming weight of our Constitution resting over my shoulder. It's my sincere hope that this weight, during the time of the interrogation of the submissions, will equally continue to rest on this court's shoulders. Why do I say so, Your Lordship? I say so because it is important for us to begin by understanding the preamble to the Constitution. When we were giving ourselves this Constitution, these are some of the sacred promises we gave unto ourselves. One of it was that we recognized the aspiration of the Kenyans people for a government.
You have 44 to 49 petitioners.
Yes, 44th to 49.
Yes.
I indicated, my Lord, that when we gave ourselves this Constitution, the people of Kenya recognized their aspirations for a government that is based on essential values, human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. That is what we promised ourselves. Number two, we promised ourselves to exercising our sovereign power and unalienable rights to determine the form of governance of our country, and we give it to ourselves and the future generation. That is why I said, Your Lordship, that this case before you is not about His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. It's about the posterity of our nation, the success of our democracy, and the fidelity to our Constitution. I therefore wish to submit that I participated in these proceedings during the Senate, and I submit that there was no impeachment that took place at the Senate. All what happened at the Senate, my ladies, my lords, was a mockery of an impeachment, a travesty of justice, the transgression of our Constitution. Your Lordship, it has been submitted earlier on by my learned friends that the question that begs the mind of this court is, was this the most appropriate avenue of addressing the alleged transgressions? Or is impeachment contemplated by our Constitution as a matter of last resort? I submit, Your Lordship, that impeachment, though a constitutional tool of enhancing accountability and good governance, must be deployed as a matter of the last resort, and especially to a person holding the office of a deputy president. Why so, my lords? Because we must be able to distinguish between the impeachment that is designated for a president and an impeachment that is designated for a deputy president. And the point of enjoys no immunity from criminal and civil proceedings. That is to say, if there is evidence that the deputy president has committed illegal transgressions, the avenue that is applicable for addressing that particular issue is to interrogate the law applicable in addressing that particular issue. So that, Your Lordship, that you subject these individuals or this individual to a process that will be less injurious to the sovereignty of the people. Remember, the office of the Deputy President, Your Lordship, though derivative of the office of the President, is distinguishable. And that's, Your Lordship, Article 150 of the Constitution, as read together with Order number 76 of the Standing Orders of Senate, requires Parliament, that is the Senate, to enhance the necessary modification when initiating this process. Your Lordship, the Constitution provides, under Article 150, Clause 2, that the provisions of Article 144 and Article 145 relating to the removal of the President shall apply, comma, with necessary modifications to the removal of the Deputy President. This necessary modification, Your Lordship, is supposed to appreciate the fact that the Deputy President enjoys no legal immunity, and hence inviting the person who accuses him or her to deploy other legal mechanisms that are available to address the aggrievement. Your Lordship, we submit that there was serious transgression of this provision, that the Senate did not deploy the modification of its standing orders and this procedure. The failure to modify, Your Lordship, meant that the Deputy President was therefore impeached under Article 144 and Article 145. He was impeached as though he is the President. And that is a transgression and the violation of the Constitution. The evidence on Mr. Nyengenye's affidavit in regard to the Hansons will bear as evidence that the Speaker did not deploy the modification mechanisms. The failure to modify this mechanism, Your Lordship, meant that the Deputy President was denied the available legal tools under Article 50 of a fair hearing. Your Lordship, this modification, Your Lordship, means something. It is meant to address something. It is not just there to decorate our Constitution. It was imperative upon the Speaker to inform the Senate of the necessity to modify the procedures for impeaching the Deputy President. Number two, Your Lordship, permit me to draw your attention to Standing Order number 78. This Standing Order number 78 has been addressed vigorously by my predecessors, but let us look at it from a different perspective. The Senate is said that the Speaker shall, within 14 days, convene a meeting of the Senate to hear the charges against the President, read Deputy President, comma, and the Senate, comma, by a resolution, comma, may appoint a special committee comprising of 11. My humble submissions, my Lord, is that we have two avenues or two forums where this impeachment can take place. The first impeachment is where the Senate sits as a plenary and as it did. The second avenue is where it contemplates by its resolution to create a special committee. Be that as it may, and even if we were to evaluate the two scenarios, the question is, the scenario and the mechanism that was deployed in the impeachment of the Deputy President, did it end up in upholding the deputy president's rights. Your Lordship, it's my humble submissions that the Senate could equally impeach the deputy president through a plenary. But when initiating this plenary mechanism, the Constitution, the standing orders requires that there be a modification so that this modification will put into place the rules of procedure to ensure that fair hearing is achieved. And this fair hearing, Your Lordship, you'll find it at order number 80, the right to be heard of the Senate. Whenever the Constitution or any written law requires the Senate to consider a petition or a proposal for the removal of a person, the person shall be entitled to appear before the relevant committee of the Senate to consider the matter, and the Senate and shall be entitled to a legal representation. Your Lordship, my argument or my submission is that even when the Senate decided to deploy the first forum of the Senate being the impeachment crowd as a plenary, they did not provide the procedures for the impeachment that would have ensured that a right to a fair hearing is accorded to the deputy president. What that means, Your Lordship, is that the deputy president was denied an opportunity under Article 27 of equal protection, equal enjoyment, and equal protection before the law. That amounted to a transgression. It amounted to an infringement. It amounted to a violation. But Your Lordship, again, you might want to ask yourself whether the Speaker had the responsibility and the duty to guide the Senate when the Senate realized that they are going for the plenary and the plenary has not provided for the mechanism. Order 1 says, Your Lordship, of the Senate rules, in all cases where matters are not expressly provided for by the standing orders or by other orders of the Senate, any procedural question shall be decided by the Speaker. The Speaker did not deploy this mechanism. The Speaker did not initiate this provision. That is to say, Your Lordship, that the Senate fell into serious legal error, fundamentally breached the Constitution and its own standing orders, Your Lordship. Your Lordship, therefore, you must want to ask yourself, in a situation such as this one, was there an impeachment? Your Lordship, it's important for us to remember what Wambora 21, Civil Appeal number 21 says. Civil Appeal number 21, which my learned senior counsel Paul Moite indicated that I was involved in its development, contemplates a two-tier approach to the impeachment. The first tier is where the judges of the Court of Appeal says that this is a political, quasi-judicial process. A quasi-judicial process, Your Lordship, is a tribunal. The Senate sat as a tribunal. The Parliament, National Assembly, equally sat as a tribunal. When it is sitting as a tribunal, it cannot be exempted, Your Lordship, from the dictates of a fair hearing, equal protection of the law, and all procedures that invites it to uphold the Constitution. It's my humble submission, Your Lordship, that in the absence of the provisions that I have quoted, Your Lordship, this could not have been said to have amounted to an impeachment. Your Lordship, that decision, Your Lordship, the Wambora decision, the judges of the Court of Appeal relied in the case of Madbury versus Madson. And this is what the judges said. It is at paragraph 32, Your Lordship. It is our considered view that insofar as the process of removal of a governor, read Deputy President, from office is concerned, the province of the court is solely to decide on the rights of an individual and not to inquire how the county assembly or the Senate performed its obligations. So even when there is a violation of a right to lordship, our submission is, if the court finds that Article 50 of the Constitution was violated and it was a right that was available to the deputy president, or Article 27 was violated and that right was available, then the court must pronounce itself by making sure that it admits our petition. Your Lordship, I invite you to look at paragraph 37 of the same decision, paragraph 39 of the decision, 40, 41, and 42. And most importantly, on the standard of proof. Your Lordship, it's my humble submission that when the Senate or the National Assembly sit as a quasi-judicial organ, whatever submissions or contributions members of the Senate or the National Assembly contribute to must speak to the fact in issue, because it's sitting as a tribunal. That is to say, therefore, Your Lordship, the message coming from the floor of the assemblies must speak to the motion. It must speak to substantiating the motion. But Your Lordship, when you look at the various members, how they contributed to the motion that was before the assembly, and Your Lordship, I would wish to begin by looking at what transpired in the National Assembly. The same evidence finds itself at the Nyengenye's affidavit. Look at what Honorable Ibrahim Sane said. This is what he said, I'll quote. I want to bring out 3 assertions which are highly distorted, emanating from His Excellency the Deputy President Gachagua. The second thing is that one who calls himself a co-president. So this member of parliament who voted for the motion was aggrieved by mere perceptions. He says, the second thing is that he always talks of having acquired a paramilitary training. He is supposed to be a symbol of harmony. So how did the issues of paramilitary, were they part and parcel of what was being considered? Even if, Your Lordship, you are to look at the Evidence Act, Section 5, as well as Section 35, on the relevance of evidence and its admissibility, Your Lordship, does this member of parliament speak to the motion? He is aggrieved that His Excellency considers and says that he has acquired paramilitary training. Look at what Ali Rosa says, member for SACU, UDA. The national unity is one of the reasons the deputy president must be impeached. He came into public stage to talk about an issue that eventually would undermine, discriminate the minorities. What issue was he speaking about? He was addressing the issues of 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. This member is aggrieved by an issue that was out in the public domain. The country was seriously engaged even during the time of the BBI with the argument of 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. For that reason, he votes to impeach the deputy president. The relevance, Your Lordship, the relevance of evidence. The nexus between what transpired in the Senate and the National Assembly to the motion in issue. The nexus. Your Lordship, let me just look at what Honorable Elijah Kororia says, member for Gatondo North. The rest you read, my lords. I want to remind this House that during the swearing-in ceremony at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, he humiliated Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta so badly before the nation and visiting dignitaries in the Republic of Kenya. This member of parliament for Gatondo did not make any further submissions on the motion. He was aggrieved by issues that were irrelevant, irrational, and reasonable. How was there any particulars in the motion that spoke about the conduct of the deputy president during the swearing in? Again, look at Honorable Kagombe, member for Gatondo South. Again, he speaks irrelevant issues, Your Lordship. What am I saying? Again, you also look at what the member, the women rep for Nyandarua said. She was aggrieved, Honorable Faith Gitau, that the deputy president has no respect for women. The reading of the motion, Your Lordship, I did not see any charge that invited the National Assembly or the Senate to evaluate such kind of conduct. There was no particulars and there was no charge. That is to say, Your Lordship, again, allow me to take you to the Senate and look at what Senator Tabitha Keroche says. This is what he says. If the boss decides that he does not want an employee, what can you do about it? It tells your lordship, this was a predisposition and a prejudged outcome. And you see, your lordship, when seated at the Senate, each senator sits as undistinguished and distinct jury. So this jury, your lordship, when he makes this kind of perceptions, political perceptions, they have the capacity and the possibility of persuading other members of the Senate. Because each vote of the member of the Senate is cast as an individual vote. So, your lordship, then you want to ask yourself, look at what my learned friend, senior counsel Ogenda is aggrieved by. Again, we shall quote him. We'll have no... So Sifuna said that, Sifuna says that he has looked at the motion. He has found that the motion does not fit well in law. But what does he do? At the fullness of time, he votes for the motion. He impeaches. You need to distinguish the conduct between Tabitha Keroche and Honorable Sifuna. Keroche is a layman or a woman. Sifuna is an advocate of this court. But even in the absence of evidence, in the absence of law supporting the process, Sifuna impeaches. Even after making a valid observation that this motion is not worth the paper it's written on. But he impeaches. It tells your lordship that what was happening there was not an impeachment. The Senate and the National Assembly was not in pursuit of good governance. It was not in pursuit of transparency. It was not in pursuit of accountability. It was not in pursuit of the rule of law. It was in pursuit of political elimination. That is what guided the Senate. And your lordship, then you might want to ask yourself, whether such a motion, your lordship, the nexus between the contribution of the members of the Senate and the motion. Wambora 21 says that there must be a nexus. And not just the nexus between about the contribution, but even the particulars that are alleged to have been transgressed and the person facing the impeachment. Your lordship, again I remind you that in 1966, during the Uganda crisis, when Milton Obote, the then Prime Minister, decided to dislodge Edward Kabaka Mutesa II, there was a minister called Grace Ibingira. He was a minister of constitutional affairs. And during that time, there used to exist the deportation of undesirable characters ordinance. That is, you'll find it in our law reports, East Africa law report. So the ordinance was being used by Kabaka and the protectorate then to deport undesired characters to the harsh Karamoja region. Then came in Obote, and Obote proposed, let us repeal this law. Ibingira, being the Minister for Constitutional Affairs, objected to the repealing of that law because he thought that that law would be used to serve the enemies that would be perceived. Do you know what, your lordship? Ibingira was the first person who was deported under that law to Karamoja region. That draws a lesson, your lordship, for us all. That this impeachment is not about His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. Again, I confirm, it's about the posterity of our nation. Your lordship, when it was argued that His Excellency has been taken ill, my submission, your lordship, is that Article 19, Article 21, Article 20, Article 24, Article 25, Article 27, and Article 28 kicked in. We are no longer now looking at the expediency of the impeachment, but looking at the right of that particular individual, the right to life, right to equal protection before the law, right to the dignity. That is what we are looking at. The Senate ignored all those. But what does Wambora tell you? Wambora case tells you, look and see whether there was violation of the rights. Your Lordship, our submission is that there was serious transgression of those rights. Your Lordship, permit me to draw your attention to section, as I go to my next point, Article 138 of the Constitution. Clause 2. It speaks about the procedure at the presidential elections. I will draw parallel later. If two or more candidates for the president are nominated, an election shall be held in each constituency. My interest is the word each constituency. When looking at this, Your Lordship, and having submitted earlier that the office of the deputy president are derivative of the office of the president, when the Nation Assembly was called upon to initiate public participation, they were supposed to initiate this public participation in the same manner and the same mode this particular person they're removing from office came into office. You reckon, Your Lordship, that in the case of Maina Kiai, it was decided that the election is at the polling center. That election at the polling center, Your Lordship, at the county headquarters. How do you make relevance of the county headquarters being the forum for public participation? How did my mother in Karusho participate in the removal of the deputy president? Yet that removal affects her sovereign will. So, Your Lordship, I will draw you to an affidavit by my friend David Madenge. David Madenge is not just another individual. David Munyi Madenge is a member of the County Assembly of Kirinyaga. He says at paragraph 9, paragraph 11, that he participated in that process. He has even annexed photos in that particular affidavit where individuals were blocked from accessing those so-called public participation forums. This is an elected member. His affidavit must be considered in the weight it deserves, having been a member who is already enjoying the sovereignty of the people. And again, Your Lordship, when you're looking at this affidavit, again look at the annexure marked as PP, as DMM1. This is the National Assembly announcement or notification of the extension of the public participation. They quote and rely on the decision of your brother, Justice Mwongo. Justice Mwongo, and that is the reason why my learned friend, the Member of Parliament for Kirinyaga, Honorable Njeri, referred to the notice of motion that brought forth these particular orders, was specific as to the forums where the public participation was to take place. The judge was therefore reading Article 138, Clause 2, that we must go as close as possible. We must decentralize as much as we can to ensure that there is meaningful, there is quantitative and qualitative public participation. But when you put it in a notice like this, my mother at Karusho, she hardly reads newspapers. She hardly reads newspapers. And Karusho, Your Lordship, is about 130 kilometers from where we are seated. We also have individuals from where we are seated in Banisa who are 700 kilometers from where we are. A newspaper is published. Tell me how Galo, how Muhammad, how Hassan had the ability to participate in this process. Just become pragmatic, my lords. View it in that lens. Your Lordship, as I sum up, permit me again to draw your attention to Article 50. Article 50 clause 2, paragraph H. Your Lordship, the Deputy President was unable to attend to his defense. Most importantly, Your Lordship, for this court to note, is that the Deputy President was the only witness for that case. He was not to call any other witness. And he has been denied an opportunity to defend himself. You'll hear my learned friend, Senior Counsel Tom Ojenda, telling you that Article 50, Clause 2, Paragraph H, permits such kind of a conduct. It says, Your Lordship, every accused person has a right to a fair trial, which includes the right, H, to be present when being tried, unless the conduct of the accused persons makes it impossible for the trial to proceed. I am very sure they would have relied on that, Your Lordship. Let me preempt them. Your Lordship, two things here. In Wambora's case, Wambora indicates, that is Wambora, the locus classicus, that the process of the impeachment is neither criminal nor civil. Therefore, this provision cannot be taken as an exemption to create the necessity for the Deputy President to be available during the process of the impeachment. Because it's distinguished that this specifically applies to an accused person. And Wambora has said that an impeachment is neither criminal nor civil. So there was no possibility, Your Lordship, that his presence could have been done away with. It was mandatory, Your Lordship, for the Deputy President to be present during the trial. As I sum up, Your Lordship, you might then ask yourself, in the circumstances, Your Lordship, where an individual has not been heard, where a person has pleaded his unavailability as a result of illness, what was available for the Senate to do? I sat through, I was present, Senior Counsel Paul Moite making an application for adjournment up to Tuesday. They rushed as if London was burning to deny that right. What was the reason, Your Lordship? They said that this was a time-bound process. That's a fallacy. That is a legal fallacy. This was not a time-bound process. And I look at it in two ways. If we were to say, Your Lordship, that the impeachment was to take place at the committee stage, there were 10 days provided for. If you were to say that the impeachment, therefore, was to take place as it did in the plenary, there were no rules requiring or giving the time period within which that process must be complete. May I repeat? When they opted for the plenary, and when they failed to modify this process so as to bring into conformity with the circumstances of the case and to create the necessary legal procedures for the impeachment, they went for it in a blanket manner. Because the plenary itself did not prescribe the time period within which this impeachment must be completed. Your Lordship, to the extent that this Senate failed to grant the Deputy President an opportunity to defend himself and hid behind the timelines, which are not constitutionally provided for because they went for the plenary, then, Your Lordship, there was a transgression of Article 25, which provides for the non-derogable rights, and a transgression and a violation of Article 50. We cannot look at it in any other way. There were no rules. The Speaker did not guide the members of the Senate as to how the plenary was to proceed if it were to sit as a quasi-judicial process. Lordship, as I invite my learned friend, Mr. Nyamu, permit me, Your Lordship, to urge you to admit these petitions. I equally associate myself with the submissions made in petition by the first petitioner and all the petitioners who have submitted before. But again, look at the affidavit of Honorable Jerry Maina. Again, Honorable Jerry Maina is not any other person. She is an MP, a member of parliament, who sat all through in that parliament, who sat and contributed to that motion. When she tells you that in her constituency there was no public participation, who am I to deny? Who am I not to believe her? She's elected. She has a distinct, identifiable constituency that her affidavit speaks about. Your Lordship, permit me to invite my learned friend, Mr. Nyamu, and urge you, Your Lordship, to find that there was no impeachment at all, and my Lord, to quash the said impeachment. But while quashing it, Your Lordship, again remember that there is nothing unjusticiable before you. The question of justiciability has been dealt with in the case of Wambora 21, and again, the case of unjusticiability, Your Lordship, that constitutional virginity was penetrated when Article 165, Clause 3, Paragraph D was enacted. That this court can penetrate the works of the Senate, the works of the National Assembly, to see to it whether it was done in accordance to the Constitution. It no longer enjoys that constitutional virginity. Mr. Nyamu. Thank you, Lordship.
Thank you.
Thank you, my lords and my lady. In the interest of justice and time, I do not need 10 minutes. I only need 4.5 minutes. My lords, my lady, my learned colleague, Degwa, has submitted exhaustively. So, I will only be enumerating the reliefs sought. My lords and my lady, at the heart of this petition lies the doctrine of popular sovereignty, as codified under Article 1, which vests the sovereignty or the sovereign power in the people of Kenya and permits its exercise either directly or through the democratically elected representatives. My lords and my lady, the office of the Deputy President is not an appointed or technocratic office. It is a direct product of a universal suffrage, deriving its legitimacy from the will of the electorates expressed at the ballot. It therefore follows that any process that seeks to remove a deputy president from office must be approached with heightened constitutional sensitivity and restraint. It implicates not merely the tenure of an individual office holder, but the sovereign will of the people themselves. Therefore, as a result, and culminating from our submissions, we have sought the following reliefs. 1, a declaration that the impeachment proceedings against the Deputy President were conducted in violation of the Constitution of Kenya and were therefore unconstitutional, null and void. Number 2, a declaration that failure to apply the modification framework under Article 152, read together with Article 144 and 145, as required, rendered the entire impeachment process fatally defective. C, a declaration that the proceedings violated the petitioner's right under Article 52A, as well as 26, 28, 48 of the Constitution. D, a declaration that the Senate acted in breach of its own standing orders, including standing orders number 75, 78, and 80, thereby rendering the proceedings procedurally ultra vires. E, an order of certiorari quashing the impeachment decision and all consequential actions arising therefrom. F, an order of prohibition restraining the implementation, enforcement, or further reliance upon the impugned impeachment decision. And lastly, any other consequential or auxiliary order that this honorable court may deem fit and just to grant. Thank you very much, my lords and my lady.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I had asked for 15 minutes. I'll try to maintain that. I acknowledge that I see I'm the last petitioner. It's based on, I believe the petitioners are really exhausted and have given admirable, so their submissions with admirable force and clarity that I feel like I'll only be doing closing remarks because they have almost said everything.
Please tell us your name.
I'm Momanyi for the 58th petitioner.
15th.
58th petition.
Yes.
Yeah, 58th.
They are not here.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we do rely on our petition, which is dated the 18th of October 2024 and amended on the 23rd of October 2024. Our submissions are also dated, our submissions and list of authorities dated the 2nd of January 2026. Your Honor, I'll seek not to traverse grounds that have already been submitted upon by my fellow petitioners. I'll only seek to maybe highlight or underscore cardinal aspects that I think maybe have not been mentioned or have not been given in the flavor that the petitioner herein may have wanted to do. Your Honor, we do submit that, looking even at our submissions, we submit that this impeachment does rest on one singular but profound constitutional question. And simply, this question, which relates to the issues that we've put before this court, is whether the impeachment of the Deputy President, the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, was conducted in accordance with the Constitution, or whether it or whether that impeachment process only represents what we term as a fundamental misapplication of constitutional power. In our submissions, we submit that the impeachment process in its entirety is a definite misapplication on constitutional power. And when we speak to constitutional power, we do rest our arguments on Chapter 1 of the Constitution of Kenya. Article 1.1 of the Constitution of Kenya does state that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with that Constitution. And when you read that provision, Article 1.1, we are reading it together with Article 1.3, which provides on how this sovereign is to be exercised through delegated power. And this delegated power has been delegated to the three arms of government. And in our submissions is that the parliament violated this power that has been given by the people. And we say that when delegated power, which the parliament wielded so capriciously for political convenience, against the very people from whom that power was given, that exercise ceased to be constitutional governance and only descended to be constitutional betrayal. And you see a parliament that indeed betrayed the sovereign power that has been given by the people and conducted an impeachment process that is not only unfair, but also an impeachment process that gravely violates very many provisions of the Constitution. In our petition, we quoted 20 provisions of that Constitution. The petitioners that have come before me have listed a lot of those provisions. I wish not to repeat. But only in summarizing my arguments under Article 1.1, I seek to remind this court of the quote by Justice Emeritus Chief Justice Maraga when he said that the greatness of any nation lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and adherence to the rule of law, and above all, respect to God. And we also submit that the only way to preserve the rule of law is to apply it equally to everyone. And many petitioners who have come before me, they have said that the impeachment process fell well below the standard of the Constitution. Your Honor, this impeachment process, as it is, opens a constitutional backdoor to power. It provides an alternative way in which the direct vote of the people has an alternative whereby we can easily impeach a leader who has been validly elected by the people through such of a sham of an impeachment process. And we urge this court to shut this door, because this impeachment, the way it was done, it puts the country at a very bad position, and as it has only left a constitutional backdoor to power, which we submit should not be allowed, as it will be an alternative pathway to electoral process, which is the direct power of the people, which is provided under Article 1. On fair hearing, Article 50, I wish not to dwell on this because the petitioners before me have really exhausted this ground. But I wish maybe to remind, I remember when my senior, Mr. Ongoya, was presenting his submissions before you, he listed 3 trials that he termed as predetermined trials with unfair outcome. I do not know the 2, but I know at least the trial of Jesus Christ. And I say in my humble submission that at least with the trial of Jesus Christ, Jesus was given the opportunity to be heard. In this impeachment process, it really, when you look at it, and you look in a constitutional democracy of the 21st century, such as Kenya, with a constitution that is celebrated across the globe, with a constitution that has fidelity to human rights and due process, you can really make a conclusion that this parliament sank very low. Even when you look even at the conduct of the speakers of both parliament, and I also relate it to the trial of Jesus, I say that at least the Pontius Pilate washed his hands when he saw that people could not move. But when you look at the Senate, instead of calling the House to order, they prevailed even to vote. Like the Speaker of the Senate went ahead to put a vote on whether someone's constitutional rights of a fair hearing should be respected. Your Honor, Article 50 contains rights that are not only inalienable, but also non-derogable. And that was a great violation of the Constitution. Your Honor, I seek to move to Article 145 and 150. And the petitioners who have come before me have made arguments both on the threshold and the process. And they have submitted that this process failed in both, not only in process, but also in threshold that is required by the Constitution. When you look at process, and I submit on Article 145(3), they made very many distinct legal arguments on whether it is a discretion or the Constitution requires that there must be a special committee. Your Honor, I'll only argue on English, plain English, even literal rule in interpretation of that provision. Your Honor, when you use the word may and you add and, you remove it as an option. When you say, for instance, I want to see, may I see John and James? It is either you see John and James or you don't. And I submit that that may that has been put there is only functions whereby the Senate may not proceed to impeachment. There may even be a preliminary objection, notice of objection on the floor of Parliament, maybe something that has emanated from the National Assembly that prevents even the Senate itself from proceeding to impeachment. But we submit that as per Article 145 and 150, there must be a special committee for investigations. On the aspect of threshold, the Constitution is very clear. It uses the word serious, it uses the word gross. Your Honor, these words are not ornamental. They have a purpose. The framers of the Constitution put them there for a particular purpose. And by use of those terms, it means that there are offenses that are impeachable, and there are also other offenses that are not impeachable. And as such, we submit that none of those charges met the threshold. And I'd like to maybe dwell on the common ground, the issue of shareholder. When you look at the mover of that motion, there's nothing he presented apart from the argument that when the Deputy President was talking about shareholder, those words were divisive, those words were inciting the public. No other evidence was brought in Parliament. Your Honor, what this mover wanted is that he put himself out as an authority to tell the Parliament, both houses of Parliament, that the term shareholder is inciting, the term shareholder is divisive, the term shareholder is against the National Cohesion and Integration Act, without even the institutional backing of that body, which enjoys public money, taxpayers' money, for it to act. Even the Senate did not proceed to conduct investigation so that they can establish these words divisive, as the National Cohesion and Integration Commission deemed it as insightful and divisive. We submit that it lacked authoritative and institutional support. So it was just the words of the mover of impeachment. I believe we dwell on the Latin phrase of ipsi dixit, which simply refers to somebody, a speaker, simply telling people that, believe me, I'm the authority. This is what I mean when I say that these words are divisive and insightful. On Article 152.
Council, you're in your last 2 minutes?
Yes, I'm finalizing. Yes, a minute.
Minute and a half.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, my lady. Your Honor, as I finish on Article 152, the petitioners who have come before me have made valid arguments on that provision. I seek not to go deep into the legal aspects of it. I only seek to direct this, my lords and my lady, to the Senate Hansard on the 17th of October 2024. I see Mr. Ojenda has been, Professor Ojenda has been attacking petitioners for mentioning Sifuna. Let me make a change and mention Okia Omtata. And Mr. Okia Omtata, these words, even if these words are adequate to prove that this provision was violated. He says that I stand here to look at whether the House has complied with the Constitution, and he mentions Article 152 on removal of the Deputy President from office. And he makes similar submissions to what my senior, Mr. Ndego, has made, that the role of a Deputy President is derivative. So when you move to impeach a Deputy President, you must acknowledge that aspects. And he says that these modifications have been couched as a mandatory. So when you're making impeachment of a deputy president, you must do the necessary modifications. Your Honor, I will not proceed to, I will rest at this position. My prayers are similar to what other petitioners have prayed for because of time. I'll not proceed to mention and rest my submissions at this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have come to Who are you? Oh? How much time do you want? Okay.
So I will use 5 minutes and allow my colleague to use 5 minutes.
All right.
5 minutes, it's now 2:30, so 2:35.
Just before I start, I just wanted to mention that we have filed our trial bundle dated 15th of April on behalf of Kitusa Sheria, and also our submissions unserved.
Your name again?
My name is Mosongo Maosa. I appear alongside Margaret Awor. Can I start? Okay. Your Lordships and your Ladyship, our Constitution contains very many promises. I will just highlight 5 promises. One of it is the promise of constitutional supremacy, that Kenyans, in exercise of their sovereign power, determined in Article 1 and 2 that sovereign power will only be exercised in accordance with the Constitution. And secondly, that the Constitution will remain supreme and at all times be followed by all organs. They were not fake promises, and Kenyans made these promises because they intended to keep every part of it. What you're arguing is that in this process, the respondents did not honor this promise that the Constitution is supreme and must be followed. Secondly, we want to argue that there was a promise that through all processes of governance, there will be transparency and public involvement. In Article 10 and 118, Kenyans had the good intentions to ensure that the promise that in all processes, the public participation of the people will be inculcated. That promise, they intended to keep it. And we are arguing that the respondents did not safeguard this promise. The third is that there is a promise of fair trial and administrative actions. A promise means everything, and once it is broken, sorry means nothing. The first petitioner had been promised by Kenyans that he will be entitled to a fair trial and a fair administrative action. Your Lordship and your Ladyship, broken promises are the reason why some people are scared to trust again. And that's why if I've asked for 5 minutes and I take more 1 minute, you wouldn't trust me again. So the same way, if Kenyans had indicated that the first petitioner would have the right to ask for an adjournment, to be present and appear, and be able to defend his case, and that right is taken away, it is unfair And some promises can break your heart too. And in this case, he actually ended up in hospital. That this promise that had been, that he will be entitled to public participation before his removal was not safeguarded, that the processes relating to his removal would be fair, and it was not fair. He ended up sick. And we are saying that in the same manner, we urge this court to safeguard this promise of a fair trial and administrative action. I still have 1.5 minutes. The fourth promise is that our Constitution, in Article 104, 145, 150, 152, 168, gives the promise of fair removal for state officers. It's not only the Deputy President who is required to be removed in a fair process, but also members of Parliament in Article 104, there's the right to recall. Our learned senior Professor Tom Ogenda, if the people of Kisumu so wish to recall him, they can recall him, but the Constitution requires that that process must be fair. Even the current president, His Excellency William Ruto, if he has to be removed, the process must be fair. And because we are now setting precedent on how they will be removed, we urge this court that the process and the promise that was given to the Deputy President was not safeguarded. There is no greater fraud than a promise not kept. We urge this court that, as Article 165 states that this honorable court has the power to intervene, and now that my 5 minutes are over, we urge your lordships and your leadership that this promise of judicial protection of this process be safeguarded, that in as much as Parliament did not keep their promise, that this process ultimately, the judicial scrutiny will also be kept. Thank you. I allow Margaret to do the remaining 5 minutes. Thank you, Your Lordships.
Thank you for keeping your promise.
Thank you, my lordships and my lady. Much has been said about public participation, but what I'll hammer home is the public participation that was conducted by the respondents. The National Assembly did not meet the thresholds of Article 10 and Article 118 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The Constitution of Kenya, Article 10 and 118 of the Constitution of Kenya provides that the public participation that should be accorded is one that is reasonable and one that is meaningful. The one that was provided by the National Assembly did not meet these thresholds. Why do I say so? If you look at the public participation that was conducted, it was condensed to 47 hubs, which was conducted in a hurry. Let's take Nakuru SK Showground. It encompassed citizens from Molo, Njoro, Naivasha, Gilgil, Kuresoi South, Kuresoi North, Subukia, Rongai, Bahati, Nakuru, Nakuru Town West, and Nakuru Town East. My lords, my lady, this required citizens to travel from far places to one single center, that what they were going to do was to vote, a chat box voting, not an engagement. That did not meet the thresholds of Article 10 and Article 118. Your Honor, sorry, my lords, my lady, you have the mandate or the power to intervene when procedure is not followed. when the procedure that is provided for under the Constitution is not followed. This power is provided for under Article 165(3) of the Constitution, and also as it was hammered in the Wambora case, the Court of Appeal, that you may only come into where necessary to confirm that the process has been properly followed as laid down in the Constitution. We are not inviting this court to intervene or to rewrite politics, but to enforce and preserve the Constitution of Kenya and the rule of law. Our prayers are provided for under paragraph 27 of our replying affidavit. These are our prayers. A declaration that the public participation undertaken by the first and the second respondent in the impeachment process of the first petitioner was neither quantitative nor qualitative as required by the Constitution. A declaration that the notice for public participation issued by the first and the second respondents were inadequate, the time frame provided for was insufficient, and the participatory mechanisms utilized were limited. To declare that the impeachment process failed to meet the constitutional threshold of public participation and is therefore constitutionally defective. Declare that the impeachment proceedings conducted on the 16th day of October 2024 by the third and the fourth respondent were procedurally unfair, unconstitutional, and ultra-vires. Declare that the third and the fourth respondents, acting quasi-judicial, violated Article 47 and 50 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 by denying cross-examination, re-examination, and a reasonable adjournment. A word, of course, to the seventh interested party, who is Kituo cha Sheria. I humbly submit.
What is the date of your affidavit, and who has deponed to it?
15th April 2026 by Professor Wambua Kituku.
Professor?
Wambua Kituku.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that is the close of the petitioner's submissions. Is there any person representing a petitioner who has not been reached or interested party? We'll break for 40 minutes to come back at 3:20 to commence the respondent's case. 3:20.
I am so hungry. Wanaacha mtu hapa.
Shall we?